Trust is so fragile. It can take years to build, but only seconds to break. And when it's the person that's supposed to love you that betrays your trust, it can be so much harder to recover. How can I trust anybody again? And sometimes the harder question is, how can I trust myself again? Welcome to the Empowered and in Control podcast, the podcast that helps people who have been impacted by domestic abuse to heal and regain power and control after an abusive relationship. I'm your host, Oriana, your favorite domestic violence expert, speaker, and the owner of To Rise Advocacy and Consulting. In today's episode, we are going to dive deep into the concept of trust, what it is, how it's broken, and how to rebuild it. So whether you're struggling with self-trust, trust issues within relationships, or even healing from betrayal, this episode is for you. We're going to give some practical tools on how to help regain power and control through confidence and emotional clarity. So what is trust? What is it really? Well, I can tell you what it's not. Trust is not getting to a point where you never get hurt again. It's getting to a point where you feel safe enough to be open. Think about if there have been times when you wanted to share something with your partner, but you knew that the reaction was going to be either a violently explosive one, or you felt like they were going to hold what you said against you, or even possibly use it against you later. There was a lack of safety in that. You don't feel safe to be able to express yourself. And so that erodes trust over time. You may have heard me say a lot of times in other episodes that healthy relationships start with you. And trust is no exception. Trust is built on consistency and honesty and also emotional safety. If you don't trust yourself to set boundaries and to make decisions or even to walk away when needed, then it can be very difficult to have external trust as well. I want you to ask yourself these questions. Do I trust my intuition? And do I keep the promises that I make to myself, even the small ones? Sometimes a lack of self-trust comes from abandoning yourself. That could be in the form of ignoring red flags. It could be over-pleasing, over-giving, people-pleasing, or it could just be staying where you're not valued. So let's talk about how trust is broken. Trust sometimes fades slowly because of unmet expectations or inconsistency within the relationship. Those are things that you're not crazy. Those are things that erode trust. Broken promises, lack of transparency, emotional unavailability, and betrayal and dishonesty. I think we all understand and know that betrayal and dishonesty can ruin trust like that. They're all trust breakers, and they're all very common. The impact that trust issues have can vary, but we don't just become cautious, we start to build walls when trust is broken. And so we have a tendency to overthink everything. It's difficult to open up. Vulnerability is not an option, right? We don't want to be vulnerable because we never want to be taken advantage of or place our trust in somebody and have that crushed all over again. So we don't want to be vulnerable. And then we have self-doubt in our decision making. How did we allow ourselves to trust that person? How did they get over on us like that? Am I going to fall for that again? And sometimes that self-doubt bleeds over into our self-worth. And then we don't trust that we're truly worth what we are. All of these affect your confidence, your peace, and your ability to heal. But the good news is that these protective patterns can be reshaped into strength. Rebuilding your trust in yourself, that's where you get your power back. And you want to start small, okay? Rebuilding trust is not about perfection. It's about consistency. So keep promises to yourself, even the small ones. I'm not always great at that. I said that I was going to do some stretching every day and I was going to do this V-shred workout, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Vince is awesome. But I haven't kept the promise to myself to do it on the days that I say I'm going to do it. I have to be more consistent. I have to keep that promise to myself because the outcome is what I'm looking forward to. That's the goal, right? But every day that I do it, I'm keeping that promise to myself. Listen to your intuition. Listen to your intuition and then act on it. I heard somebody say once, you don't see gazelles at the watering hole looking at the crocodile saying, that crocodile ain't gonna do nothing. I'm gonna just go ahead and get this water real quick. That's not how that works. Animals have animal instincts and intuition to know when they are in danger, and they get on down. We talk ourselves out of it. We second guess and we want to make excuses and all the things, which brings me to make sure that you're paying attention to what people's actions really are. And we'll talk about that again. Also, stop seeking constant validation from others. There's a difference between external validation and internal validation. You're trying to build that internal validation, right? You're trying to rebuild that trust within yourself. And so when you get to the point where you're able to do that, you can rely less on external validation because you're not always going to get it. And sometimes the people that we're around are not the people that are able to give it or were even willing to give it. So seeking that validation constantly can cause problems with your self-esteem as well. And also forgive yourself for your mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. Even when it comes to relationships, if we've been in an abusive relationship and there are things that now we're looking back and saying, oh gosh, I can't believe that I did that. I can't believe that I fell for that. I can't believe that I believed this person. Forgive yourself. Again, we all make mistakes and there are things that sometimes we don't know and we don't know to look for. But you have to be able to forgive yourself in order to move forward, in order to heal. Again, rebuilding trust is not about perfection. It's about consistency. So every time you show up for yourself, you're giving yourself the message that I've got me. Now, let's talk about rebuilding trust in others. Okay, first of all, loves. Not everyone deserves access to you. I said it. I said what I said. Not everybody deserves that. Trust is earned, and that has to come with time. So, healthy trust looks like taking your time. I know we all want to rush. Instant gratification is a thing. I understand that. But that's also where a lot of high risk behaviors come from, is rushing into things. Take your time. Because what criteria are you using to determine whether or not you trust someone? And how long are you giving them to prove themselves as being trustworthy? Observe actions. Look, we all know the saying, actions speak louder than words. So pay attention to those actions. Like, be watching. Listen to the actions instead of the words, because they'll show you a pattern. Setting boundaries. But here's the thing. I don't like just talking about setting boundaries. It's setting boundaries and consequences and follow through. You have to have all three. You got to have all three parts, because you can set a boundary, but if you don't have consequences for when somebody crosses that boundary, then that just tells them they can keep doing it. If you set a boundary and you have a consequence, but you don't follow through with it, you're just telling them that they can continue to do it. Think about children, right? You tell a kid not to do something, and there are no consequences if they do it. You haven't explained to them what the consequences would be. They do it. And then you set a consequence and you say, look, if you do that again, I'm going to take away your iPhone. They do it again, but you don't take away their iPhone. You're teaching people how to treat you based on whether or not you are able to set boundaries, set consequences, and also setting follow through and actually following through. It doesn't always feel great. I know that. Nobody wants to be the bad guy or feel like the bad guy. You're not. You're setting boundaries. And those boundaries are important for your emotional safety. And I'll say it again, I've said it in another episode. The people who benefit or the people who have the biggest problem with you setting boundaries are the ones who benefited from you not having them before. So if somebody doesn't like the fact that you are now putting a boundary in place that, no, I don't like it when you come in and try to get lovey-dovey with me when you've been out all this time and ignoring, the things that I need. I don't feel like doing that. If they get mad about that, that's a whole nother conversation, and there need to be consequences and follow through. And I would also say that you want to allow trust to grow gradually. It kind of goes back to the taking your time, right? But you have to allow that trust to grow gradually, because whether this is a new person or whether you are rebuilding trust with someone who betrayed you before, it doesn't just go away. It's not about being blind to what happened before. It's also not about holding grudges. So you have to just allow that trust to happen through consistency and through open communication and through showing up and being there. So those are some of the things that I would recommend as far as how to rebuild that trust in other people. There are others, and there are more things that you can do. These are just a few examples. Look, I'm not saying that you are never going to get hurt again. That's not what trust is about. It's not about never experiencing pain or betrayal again. It's about increasing awareness, right? And knowing what things to look for and trusting yourself and your instincts based on your previous experience, right? It's about moving forward with wisdom. And please know that, again, trust is not about eliminating, the or removing the risk of being hurt. But you have to trust that even if you do get betrayed, or even if your trust is broken, that you'll be okay. You have to trust that you can handle it, that you're able to walk away, that you're able to heal, and that you can rise again. Once you're able to trust that you're able to do that, even if things don't go the way that you want them to or hope for them to, you have that trust in yourself because you've built that consistency and you've kept those promises to yourself, and you've been watching people's actions, and you have been setting boundaries, and you have been able to walk away when you know that the value that they are trying to assign to you is not correct. If this episode resonated with you at all, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with somebody else who might need to hear this message. And I'll say this, if you're ready to take your power back, then please, I would say make sure you subscribe to the Empowered and in Control podcast so that you don't miss episodes that are designed to help you heal and to regain that power and control. That's what we're here for. So drop in the comments what trust means to you today. I want to know what steps you're taking to trust yourself and your decision making after being in an abusive relationship. Have you gotten to that point yet where you actually trust that you make good decisions and that you can trust your intuition, and that if you choose to get into another relationship, that you don't have to be concerned about whether or not you'll be okay if it doesn't work out? You'll be okay. Thank you so much for watching the Empowered and in Control podcast. Again, I'm your host, Oriana, your favorite domestic violence expert, speaker, and owner of To Rise Advocacy and Consulting. And I hope this has been a helpful episode about trust and rebuilding trust in yourself and in others. I'll see you next week.